Hey everyone, welcome back to Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. And today we're going to be answering your questions on this episode of Real Management Talk. And so LJ, hey, it's great to see you. I am so excited.
It's so great to see you.
We're moving, as I shared in our last episode, as I was showing everybody. And hey, the house went on the market today, which I'm really excited about. But now I have to figure out how to pack down all the Legos and put builds and stuff and move them. So maybe I can work
a unique problem
today, right?
A very unique problem.
It is a unique problem.
That I'm proud to say that you have.
Right? Well, sometimes I build to think, right?
Yeah.
And that's just some of my way. I mean, I do some other stuff, but it really does help me think through stuff and be creative. But I was just sitting here like 2 days ago saying to myself, this is a problem you never thought you'd have. How in the heck do you move all these collectible Lego sets that you've built? Like, how do you do this? Now, so I did a YouTube search, just so you know.
No way.
There must be 500 videos on how you pack your Lego sets to move them so you don't have to 100% tear them apart. And everybody's got a different thing. But I'll tell you, it involves a lot of saran wrap, apparently.
Wow. Okay. Yes. As I imagine. That's right? Exceptional.
But anyways, as I was saying, we're going to be answering questions today, like enough about me and my crazy Legos and my crazy moves. So, and sometimes somebody will listen to this podcast and, a year from now and be like, oh my gosh. Or I'll listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? So.
Quarantine, right? But I'm happy because we have this sort of potpourri style episode to offer to everyone today. And I think it's going to be nice. It's a nice it's different, So let's go ahead and get started. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we went ahead. And again, guys, if you have not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and smash the subscribe button. Go to Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. If that's what you query in the YouTube search bar, you will find us almost immediately, hopefully. If you don't, let us know. Make sure that you smash the like buttons on all of our episodes and make sure that you smash that subscribe button. All right. Now, also check us out on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn profile at Real Management Talk. And we also have an Instagram profile at Real Management Talk. We also have a Facebook profile at Real Management Talk. So go and check us out. Make sure that you like all those pages so that you can stay in the know of what we've got going on. For example, just yesterday, we posted a question to all of our followers to figure out what types of conversation would they want Jocelyn and I to have, right? So for this particular episode, we're doing something of a grant writing queries cauldron, okay? It's a potpourri style episode where we're just, everything's in the pot, we're stirring it up. We're gonna be sipping on your questions and going ahead and taking a stab at each of those before we get out of here today. So again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. All right, Jocelyn, first question.
Okay.
What information is needed to request a grant?
Well, so on the basics of it, if you're going to request a grant and information needed, first off, you need to identify what program you're going to be applying for, or if you're going to apply for your organization overall for what's known as operations funds. So on the big surface level, we need to know that. From there, we need to know what the staffing level is, how many hours a week, say your program's going to serve, or what type of clientele if you're applying overall, what type of clientele and how many a year clients do you serve a year? Or if maybe you don't keep track of it that way, but there's something very unique that you do, say dogs or cats, you know, how many of them do you do whatever it is that you're doing with a year? Because there's all kinds of different nonprofits, right? You need to know what your budget is. And is your budget in line with your overall organization budget? Because that's really important. You need to know, do you have the capabilities to actually carry out the grant if it's funded? And by that, I mean, a lot of times we see huge evaluation pieces now. So you need to know, can you do the evaluation? Right?
That's right.
So
I love what you said are the major components, right? Like when we think about getting an organization grant eligible, everything you just said, from staffing levels to budgets plural, guys, not just one, budgets. We're going to tack onto that financial statements. And yes, we're talking about your profit and loss statements, your position statements. Those sorts of things are really important. We've got to be very clear on that. And they've got to be, if you're not going to have audited financials, if they're not going to be audited, at least make sure that the board has had some sort of very fleshed out discussion of those financials. I'm talking about, you have a finance committee, okay, that could be composed entirely of your board of directors, or it could be, a nice mix of community leaders, staff members, and board members, right? However you've organized it, as long as you've got some sort of finance committee, there needs to be some agendas and meeting minutes speaking directly to the fact that these financials have not only been vetted, they have been, I'm talking, heavily scrutinized to the point where the board, okay, needed to make some sort of decision in order for those financial statements to be shared publicly. All right. People forget that that is a huge step in any types of grant eligibility process. That's going to always be paramount. Okay. And there's several other things that we've already discussed in previous episodes. So we do encourage you to go and check out those other episodes in response to the question, which again was, what information is needed to request a grant? We're not going to belabor the answer. I think Jocelyn and I have done a great job of talking about these this very important topic in our previous episodes. So again, if you haven't already listened to the other episodes, take the time and get through them. Come back to us and let us know if we need to redress the question, and we'll come up with some more answers for you. But I think that we've covered it. So Jocelyn, let's go ahead and move to the second question.
Okay.
Why would a business want to pursue a grant?
Well, there's a couple of reasons I think a business wants to pursue a grant. Okay, any type of business. Because there are grants, not as common, but there are some for profit. So let's take the nonprofit business first. The reason a nonprofit business typically wants to pursue a grant is to fund their program. That is really the number one reason. That's the way that they see the revenue coming in. They see the revenue in their organization coming in faster that way, which I'm going to put a caveat in here, is not true, but that's a different subject, so we won't go off on a different tangent here. But but they see it as, or it's part of a bigger project. A lot of times they can be part of a capital project, right? For a business, a for-profit business, sometimes the government does, as we know, certain types of, that's how, especially at the federal level, but the state level, a lot of times, that's how they release the money into the public and impact the economy. So a for-profit might want to look at something, let's say they're big enough. I'm going to talk in the healthcare sector, because a lot of your healthcare sector is a nonprofit. Now, remember, there's like 29 different versions of nonprofits, folks. So here's the thing. So these guys can be different, but especially in healthcare, scientific research, all of that, they will release money that for-profits can be eligible for, not just the nonprofit side of that sector, to encourage innovation and creativity and breakthroughs and all of that. So those are some of the reasons that you may be in a sector for that. We're seeing, and I think, LJ, you've seen this too, where we're seeing in the last couple of years, we're seeing a lot more grant type competitions. So people enter those to get a small grant a lot of times when they're in business or they're newly starting out, because they want recognition in their local community. I mean, they need some funds to help them, but a lot of times there's the other underlying issue that they want to be recognized that they're in business and that they're doing good as well. So that's why I think we pursue the grants.
I mean, I think when you say that there's, 29 plus different types of nonprofits, right? Thank you for saying that, because that is one of the things I think that most people lose sight of. There's only one type of charity, right? If the IRS or whoever says, we're looking to support charities, that should bring to you, okay, that's a 501c3, right? That's not a trade association. That's not a chamber of commerce. Those are your 501c6s, and then you've got your PACs, your 501c4s. So there's so many different types of nonprofit structures that people really kind of lose sight. It's a misnomer. Nonprofit is really, it's like grants. It can be a misnomer. The second thing that you said too that really inspired me is when you think about the strategic partnership angle of grants, pursuing grants, right? A lot of times, like you said, a lot of businesses especially pursue grants not necessarily because they need the money, but because they've got something that they want to be, blasted like an IPO. It's IPOs and grants nowadays are kind of in the same realm. Like you said, there's an innovation, there's something that they've got that's new at the organization, and they want to put it out there on Front Street, and they want everybody to know about it, right? They also want, banks to attach themselves to the project. They want government entities to attach themselves to the project. What better way to get the support of those hegemons than to, just go after a grant opportunity with them, right? So I think you hit it on the head with both of those very important points. And I think that for us, as the grant professionals that we are, I know for us, the takeaway that we really want a lot of these people who are listening and watching to get is that you pursue a grant as understanding that grants are projects, right? Literally, definitively speaking, the definition that we use for a grant is the same definition that we use for a project. We're talking about a unique product, service, or result that is time limited, that's going to bring you some sort of benefit, right? It's some sort of gain. That is the entire reason why you, undertake a grant opportunity or a project, right? That's why projects and processes are not the same. Exactly. That's why we distinguish these things, right? We say projects are unique, they're one time, they've got very specific goals that they need to meet, and then they are rolled into everyday processes, right, to make them better. That's why we make the distinction. I think that's the same thing we do with grants. And that's why we don't, again, people, Jocelyn's going to say the same thing. This is why we don't say grants are fundraisers, okay? That's why we make the distinction, because yet again, what we're saying is that yes, funds will be raised with these grants, but listen to what Jocelyn's saying. These are strategic initiatives. Yes. So it's much bigger than fundraising. It's about relationship building. It's about reputation building. It's about branding. It's about marketing. It's about all those things that you don't really necessarily think about because it's in depth. There's nothing shallow about pursuing grants. Remember that, please, people, and pay us. Okay, pay us because it's a lot of work. It's not easy. All right, and that's why people like us exist.
Right. Well, I mean, before we go on here, but what I'm going to say is grant writing, in some respects, I'm going to say it's kind of like prepping your house for market. It oftentimes takes 5 times as long as you thought it was going to take for a variety of reasons we won't go into, but it really is. And so unless you have a lot of experience, especially if you've just started out, it is well worth the investment to pay a professional that knows what they're doing. But also to remember that you need to pay that professional what they're worth. Don't expect to get it. If you have a really low dollar amount in place, your odds a lot of times to get it funded are very low. Now, we can't, neither LJ nor I, nor any other grant writer, I'm going to say this, can guarantee whether you'll get funded. That's a whole different issue because there's just too many factors that you don't control. However, and these days on average, only about 1 in 10 get funded. So don't you owe it to yourself to give it a fighting chance, even if it's something that you have to apply to more than once? As LJ and I can both tell you, on the federal level, sometimes it really is the 3rd time's the charm. I mean,
listen, after you've courted, you got to get in front of that program officer. Listen, you got to take them out for some wine and some tapas, okay, some chimichurri. Okay, you got to make sure you give them a Christmas card every year. Don't play with these federal grants. But this is, to Jocelyn's point, and we're going to move on to the next question, but to Jocelyn's point, do not hire grant professionals like us and not actually have a process in place. Okay, we're going to go back again. Projects and processes. Grants are projects, right? Processes are those routine, day-to-day things, all right? What does that mean to you? When you are ready for big wigs like us, the way that you know you're ready is because you have staff in place who can work with us to help make you successful, okay? Once you hire, and you can hire us independently to do the job for you, but just know that it's going to be extremely expensive because you don't have staff in place to ensure fidelity. You don't have staff in place to give us what we need to make sure that we can, come in and gather all the financial statements like we were talking about before, gather all that data easily, gather all the standard operating procedures that we're going to need to be able to substantiate your program goals and your evaluation metrics, gather all of the administrative handbooks that we're going to need to be able to substantiate that you actually do have monitoring and evaluation embedded into your own administrative processes in the organization. These are the types of things as grant writers, grant professionals, we have to have that information. If we are supposed to be successful at our job, that means we have to have C-suite executive level staff who can either do the work themselves or dictate to, their employees to get us this type of information. Okay. Otherwise, if we're having to do it ourselves, it's going to be very expensive. Because again, projects and processes, the outcome of a project, you want to roll into the process. Okay, you don't want it to just go away. If it goes away, you're wasting your money. Okay, it's inefficient. We are effective when we have people in place that we can hand lessons learned and best practices to. Think about the grant process as building a binder, right? The binder, when we're done with that particular grant, there's a binder of information. All types of lessons learned, all sorts of everything that you might need, right? Goal statements, result statements, objectives, strategic planning, all sorts of things in there, all sorts of great relics and organizational process assets for your organization. When we go away, who's supposed to get that information? Who is supposed to take that information and act on it? Okay, so that there is some sort of follow-up, there's some sort of continuous improvement that's embedded in the process. That's what you have to be thinking about. You have to be thinking about the short, the medium, and the long-term goals that your organization wants to set before, during, and after you hire grant professionals like us to come in and take you to the next level. Because guess what? Grant professionals need other grant professionals. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And it's impossible really for one organization or one person to really be on it, you know, all the time. You know, you need to have other people. That's how Jocelyn and I really, you know, came to fall in love with one another, because Jocelyn was also leading in her space. We're both, you know, grant professionals. Jocelyn, I've always admired her because she was leading in her space. And I said, listen, we need to work together, because there's stuff that she's going to know that's being announced that I'm not going to know, and vice versa, because we have different lenses,
Right.
you know, we have different focuses. And that is the strength of having a sort of cohort of professionals that you can, you know, rely on.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Just saying. I know I went too far with that one, but I just, you know, I wanted to let everybody know.
I don't think you went too far with it. No, you're right on the money with that one. Okay, next question.
Don't say we didn't tell you. Okay, the last question here, which is, not going to answer this one fully for free, people. This is billable hour question. All right, this is billable hours. The question, Jocelyn: how can for-profits run a nonprofit arm?
Yeah, so, you know, the short answer on that is there's probably about 10 different ways that can be done. And determining what is the right way for your for-profit business to do that is a much longer conversation. But to give you an idea, there's a new type of corporation that's been around for a few years that the IRS recognizes. So it's kind of a hybrid between the for-profit and the nonprofit. There is ways that the for-profit can create one of a various type of, when we hear the word foundation, which is, it's not your charitable organization, even though they raise money and they have all the same stuff as a foundation, but there's probably about 4 different versions of foundations, 4 to someplace in there. So you could, there's that route, creating the foundation. There's the route of just deciding that the company's going to give a certain amount of money to a nonprofit that they support or that they want to partner with instead of starting their own. I mean, and there's variations within each one of those 3. And you know, as LJ says, when we get approached with that question, that is a totally different question that is profit driven for us. I'm just going to be honest about it. Okay. So when you come to any, you know, nonprofit professional and you're asking that question, the consultant, professional, whatever, it really is, it's part of something that not everybody does it, because as we all have different specialties, but that we really work with the client one-on-one to structure. They have actually engaged us to have that whole conversation.
And Jocelyn and I have been, so it's not just like the knowledge, like you said, because that's huge. And we monetize our knowledge. You know, that's how we make our living and that's how we survive, right? But the other part of that too, that people have to understand, is that you and I have led organizations that are literally exactly what this questioner is asking, we've led those organizations as their president, as their ED, as their their chair of the board of directors. So we've been from the perspective of volunteer, we've been from the perspective of staff, and then like you said, we've also been from the perspective of, okay, we've got a client that we're working with and they are a for-profit entity who's interested in having a consortium of for-profit entities and nonprofit entities that that they act as a fiscal agent for, or like you said, they contribute X amount every month to an endowment for, right? So that's our unique experience. So yes, people, we are more than happy to help you through that process, but you will have to hire Vanconi Business Strategies and or Tacit Growth Strategies. We're not going to give that to you for free, but thank you so much for asking.
Yeah. Well, and it is a great question, but the truth is, on our podcast here, for us to even if we were willing to impart all of that knowledge without some type of vehicle in which to do that, which we may talk about that at some later in depth. It is a very complex thing. It literally that question and in determining that could be a multi-day discussion. And I don't mean in the little 15 minutes to a half an hour that we do in this podcast. I mean, because it really is that complex. And so it's not something that we can easily answer for you from the standpoint of even our answers. They're depending on what you're trying to do. There can be legalities and like that. And, in full disclosure, which, neither one of us are CPAs or attorneys. So while we know a ton, and we do know a lot about the laws, and we're very used to working with the CPAs and the attorneys, and they love us both because we can talk their language too. But, it would be really remiss of us to give you right here in this episode that type of advice on what exactly you should do, because it's very individualized. So
that's right. Everything from bylaws to financial statements. Like you said, the tax attorney, Jocelyn and I have a cadre of tax attorneys that we've dealt with for years. And the reason why is because of these types of situations. It's like, we've gone through the process with them on multiple occasions, but at the end of the day, we are not the replacement, right? Like you have to, and it goes back to what Jocelyn said, if you're not interested in spending money on these professional services, because if you look at your line items, okay, if you look back at your budgets, like Jocelyn was telling you, and if you don't have a line there for professional contracted services, legal, oh, oops, I lost you. I think it's coming back.
I think you're coming back.
It's coming back.
You froze up just slightly, but we're fine.
Oh, good. Okay. But no, like we were saying, we're not a replacement for tax attorneys. What we do is we like to bring in those professionals with us because that is something that is extraordinarily valuable. And it's something that you can never, ever, ever, ever go without, especially if you're in business for yourself, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever the business structure is, you've got to have those types of professionals on your budgets at all times, period. Get the quotes, ask them what their hourly rates are, ask them, what their price is, and you just need to budget for that and make sure that you can cover it. It's the same thing for your grant professionals. Some things you just can't do for free. And these types of professional services are the types of things that will not be done well for free.
Exactly. In our opinion, you may disagree with us, but this is in our opinion, right? So.
Well, if you want a challenge, give us a challenge. Like, I literally want to hear from you. Anyone out there who listens to or watches this episode and has had these services for free and has been able to sustain whatever it is that you gained for free, you please let us know. Reach out. We've got an email now. Reach out to our assistant Guy at realmanagementtalk.com, and you tell us about that success story, because we'll be happy to hear that. Okay, we will laud you for years and years and years if that's the case, but we highly doubt that.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so before we button up, because we talked about my Legos. Okay, so what's the one go-to fun thing? Well, I know you have multiple fun things, but what's one of your fun things that you just like to do that like most people don't know about you?
I would say, okay, like you said, yours. Oh, no, I was gonna say, I know yours is Lego building. Mine would have to be. It's gonna be between coloring, really painting, because I don't have crayons anymore. So it's painting, and I honestly am gonna have to put trading. Right, trading has become a serious hobby for me. And you know, when it's a hobby, of course, that's the paper trading, folks. We're not talking about real money. That's the paper trading, you know, that's just practice. But that's really become a hobby for me because there's so many funding vehicles. You know, Jocelyn, you know, you said that earlier. There's so many different types of funding vehicles. And I think really sort of becoming financially literate is a huge hobby for a lot of people. I think we just don't talk about it because math is like, ooh, you know, we don't like math. But I think there's a burgeoning group of people now that are just like, you know what, I can do this. I have a calculator. I can calculate short float. You know, I can calculate VWAP. Right? Like it's a challenge, and it's something that I think a lot of us, you know, get pleasure out of. So that's been a thing for me. Trading has been a huge hobby for me lately, and I know several people don't know that because they're like, "What, LJ?" Yeah, that's my thing. Okay.
Exactly. All right. Cool. All right. So there you hear it, folks. I have Legos. LJ has trading. We both actually like to color, and we'll admit that we have had coloring books and crayons in our desk. So.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so.
Using highlighters to draw within the lines.
Exactly. So, well, guys, we will see you on the very next episode of Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn, and we hope that you've enjoyed this Potpourri episode.
Woo! Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.